I'd like to start this recording by saying that I don't want anyone to leave Sea Shepherd after this, and anyone who's supported Sea Shepherd financially or otherwise in the past, I want you to continue doing so. We need Sea Shepherd to be a successful organisation. It is the only organisation currently hunting whales in Antarctica, and they have a valuable role to play, and I hope they will continue doing that and have some success. However, there has been some things on the last campaign and more recently that have concerned me a great deal, and it's come to the point where I've decided to resign from Sea Shepherd, and hopefully with my resignation there might be some good things that come from it. The first thing I'll tell you about is the sinking of the Ady Gil. When the Ady Gil was rammed by the Shonan Maru, there was a lot of damage in the forward section, but from the helm back was unaffected, and the Ady Gil would never have sunk despite it looking quite bad on the bow. Could have been towed to Hobart, could have been towed all the way to Perth, could have been towed to the French base. Plans were afoot to take it to the French base, and Ady Gil, the man, he was planning on funding a recovery of it from there. Now, I was given an instruction from Paul Watson via Chuck Swift to deliberately sink the Ady Gil, and this would allow the fleet, the Bob Barker, to go chasing the whaling fleet, which was a good thing. And I believe it was also done to garner sympathy with the public and to create better TV. And I have no problem with the first bit. The problem I have is that it was all done in secret, and we were ordered not to tell any crew about it, not to tell our families, and to especially not tell Ady Gil. Now bear in mind, this is Ady Gil's boat, and we have received instructions to go sinking his boat, and we're expected to keep it a secret from him. Paul Watson was my admiral. I did it out of loyalty to him, and he gave me an order and I carried it out. But I was ashamed of it at the time, and I'm ashamed of it now, and it was a most dishonest thing to do, and I've regretted it ever since. And I just don't think we should be conducting ourselves in that sort of way, and you know, I apologise for my role in this. There was another issue that has come to light, the fake shooting of Paul Watson. Apparently a couple of years ago, they staged a shooting where they pretended that Paul Watson was shot by a sniper from the Japanese vessel, and several crew who were present at the time have said it was all faked. And it's just another example of just creating lies when we don't need to. You know, Sea Shepherd is better than this. We shouldn't be lying because it makes good TV or it makes good drama or gets media. You know, the whaling is barbaric. It's bad enough. We don't need to go doing these, coming up with deceptive things to garner sympathy. We should be acting with honesty down there, not coming up with things like that. The third example is this bow and arrow. Paul specifically gave me permission to take a bow and arrow to Antarctica. When the Ady Gil was sunk, 4 arrows were found in the water, and Paul Watson issued a press release denying that there was ever bow and arrow on the Ady Gil. Now, I had no problem with the bow and arrow on there, neither did Paul when he said I could take it. The whalers have got explosive harpoons and 12-gauge shotguns. We've got a bow and arrow, whoop-de-doo. But anyway, he issued the press release, and it's lying to media, and we just shouldn't be doing that. There was no reason to. But then what happened, when I'm in prison, the first episode of Whale Wars shows me and my crew practicing with the bow and arrow on the back deck, and Animal Planet refused to take it out. Now Sea Shepherd perceived they would get a big backlash from supporters over the violent use of something like a bow and arrow, and so they expelled me from the organisation, and I know it was a deliberate expulsion. I've had this verified from 2 sources. They wanted to expel me. Then there's a backlash from a number of supporters and volunteers and some friends of mine who've been working for Sea Shepherd for a long time. They quit specifically over this. And Sea Shepherd, in response to that, came out with the line that, oh, it was actually a ploy, we did it all along to help Pete's sentencing. Now, my lawyers knew nothing of this. They certainly hadn't requested it, and they actually said to me it wasn't really a good thing because it portrayed me as dishonest. Paul Watson was saying I'd taken a banned object to Antarctica and that he had no knowledge of it. And portraying me as dishonest, it certainly didn't go helping my case at all. So I get out of prison and I'm told I was all a ploy, you're welcome back on campaign. Then a month later, I say to Sea Shepherd, I would like to go on the next campaign, and I had hoped that I could get down and maybe add a little bit of value to things. Paul then says, no, you can't, because in fact Sea Shepherd has made a secret deal with the judges, and we have promised not to take you back to campaign, and if you do, next time someone from Sea Shepherd is arrested, it will be very bad for them because we've shown dishonesty. And this is farcical to try and claim that. You know, Sea Shepherd is a despised organisation in Japan. To think that they could get someone in there and cut a deal with the Japanese judges, there's no way that would ever happen. So I asked Paul for details of this agreement, made a copy of the agreement and who had set it up and those things. And nothing comes through. And then a week later, in fact, I'm told that I can't go because I'm a security risk now, because I made a secret deal with the Japanese prosecutors in exchange for a lenient sentence. And Paul is saying that in this deal I gave them a whole lot of information to have him arrested as part of the secret deal. Now, the one thing I did do is I did say Paul ordered me onto the Shonan Maru. Now, this was under advice from my legal team that Sea Shepherd had appointed me. Now, certainly there's nothing happens on the Steve Irwin without Paul's express permission, and my choice of words between express permission and order was unfortunate, and I've apologised to Paul for it, and as a result of my actions, Paul has been put on the Blue Watch at Interpol by the Japanese. Now, what the Blue Watch means is that when he crosses a border, Paul's movements are sent to the Japanese. Secondly, when Paul was crossing between Canada and the USA, he had his handcuffs. He had his hands get handcuffed. Now, for an activist, that's actually not that bad. He's been handcuffed once, and the Japanese, instead of looking at his Facebook to find his permission, they get it sent to them automatically. It's not really that onerous. I would certainly trade my 5 months in prison for being handcuffed once and not having to Facebook the Japanese anymore. So I don't think it's a big deal, and I have apologised for Paul that my choice of words were unfortunate. In my final testimony, I recounted it because I said in my final testimony that Paul Watson had knowledge of my boarding, but he did not order me to do it. And so I did my best to reduce the circumstances. Paul is still on Blue Watch. He's been on Blue Watch several times before. I don't think it's such a big deal, and I certainly don't think it's worth, booting me out over it. So after that, Paul informs me that I'm not welcome at the Sea Shepherd fundraisers anymore, and he would like me to contact the organisers and tell them I'm no longer available to speak at those. He also informs me that Sea Shepherd has decided that they're not going to purchase 800 copies of my book after all, and that would have been okay. Sea Shepherd doesn't have to go selling my books if they don't want to. The trouble is these 800 books have been printed and I've got a $16,000 bill that I now have to come up with. So, and these were all promises and commitments that Sea Shepherd has made, and I just feel that my treatment hasn't been the best for someone who has sacrificed a little bit for Sea Shepherd and for the whales. And if they make these commitments to their volunteers, Sea Shepherd should be good enough to honour those commitments and not come up with lies like agreements with judges or things like that. And what's happened recently is I found out that there's a whole lot of other volunteers being treated in a similar fashion, and in fact this stretches back a couple of years. And so what I did, I gave Paul an ultimatum. I sent him a long email a couple of days ago, and what I requested was that Sea Shepherd starts afresh and they make a commitment to have no more lies, no more fake shootings, no more sinking of vessels and not telling the owners, um, to get away from this deception. You know, we don't need to be dishonest to get people to back us on this. The story is good enough. And secondly, I wanted him to start honouring obligations that he makes to volunteers, including myself. Um, so that was sent to Paul Watson. And then yesterday, I find out that Paul has leaked little snippets of my email. He's leaked them to the media in Tasmania. And at that point, I decided that I could no longer go working with Sea Shepherd, and I've handed my resignation in. Now from here, there's been a little bit about it today, but at the end of it, I want Sea Shepherd to be successful. I can't work with Paul anymore, but there's plenty of other people who can. And I hope that the Sea Shepherd team can rally around and move on from this and be successful. But I also hope that they can start acting with some integrity and honesty, and they can start being fair with their volunteers. And if they make commitments to volunteers, they should go honouring those commitments. They shouldn't just turn around a month later and change them, or 2 months later and change them. And certainly, you know, the number of crew who've been booted off for no apparent reason, I think they should start just treating people fairly. And that's what I'm hoping for. It's funny, out of all this, you know, all my treatment by the Japanese, I have no problems at all. No problems with prison. I guess I wasn't so happy at my boat being rammed. The boat being rammed was a very sad part of it, but the only other problem I have has been my treatment by the 3 upper managers in Sea Shepherd. And I think they need to take a good hard look at themselves. And I think the board of Sea Shepherd, if they were made aware of these things that are happening, I think they should make steps to go correcting them. Sea Shepherd is much better than that. It's got thousands of volunteers who turn out and raise money for it. It's got a bunch of sponsors who go funding them. It's got good people in the organisation. All it's got is a little bit of rot at the top, and I hope that maybe they look at themselves, the board looks at them, they make some changes, and they move forward in a positive way, and get down to Antarctica and go and nail those whalers. And when you do come back to a place in New Zealand, I will welcome the boat in, and I will cheer it in Hobart, or I will cheer it in Auckland or Dunedin, or wherever you guys land. Sea Shepherd is in my blood, and it has hurt me to have to shift away, but it has become inevitable. From here, I'm off to Tonga with my 2 girls, and I'm going to go whale watching, snorkeling, maybe a bit of free diving, and getting pissed on the beach. Thanks heaps for listening, and don't forget, I don't want anyone to leave Sea Shepherd over this, and if you pay money to Sea Shepherd monthly or yearly or whatever, please keep doing it. We need them to be successful. See ya.